Well, hello everybody. Welcome back to Literature in Robes with your host Jared.
You seem sprightly.
Today we're going to talk about the new book by Brandon Sanderson, Wind and Truth. It is the 5th book in the Stormlight Archive, and it is a book that has received mixed reviews, at least critically. There are a lot of videos out on the internet, opinions, all kinds of things, and just a reminder, this is my opinion of the book. If any of you watch some of my videos, you'll know that I do have kind of a sour taste about Brandon Sanderson already.
Oh God, that is bitter. Oh, that's really bitter.
However, I did want to at least complete what has been called the first arc of the Stormlight Archive. Wind and Truth. It is a 1,300 page volume, plus minus a few pages, and it is a beast. It is the biggest book of the 5, and upon further inspection, it appears that Sanderson is writing larger and larger books every time he puts one out.
Could it be any bigger?
I wonder if the trend will continue in book 6, but book 6, he says it'll be some years before he puts that one out. Could be 6 years, maybe 8 years, I don't know. It's going to take him a while. Like many fellow YouTubers out there, I don't know if I'm going to continue the Stormlight Archive. It is just such a monster, such a big
beast.
I mean, it definitely earns its name epic fantasy, and the fact that it is massive in an epic scale, but at the same time, I don't believe that I'm alone in thinking that Brandon is a wordy author.
Is this guy ever going to shut up?
It's almost too much, and I'll get into some of the details a little bit more as we go, but this is going to be kind of my review of it. There will be some spoilers later in the video because I'm going to break down the book into the various days, which is kind of how Brandon decided to parse out the final 10 days. There is an outcome at the end of this book that was set up in the 4th book, Rhythm of War. So he kind of splits it into days, which makes the reading a little more manageable, but at the same time it's still a lot of book. Brandon Sanderson has 4 other books in the Stormlight Archive. He has a lot of standalone novels as well that kind of fill in the gaps. I believe he wants to tie in all of his Stormlight with the Cosmere. And here's Oathbringer and Rhythm of War. It's kind of turning into this massive undertaking. And I think that I personally have not read any of his standalone novels, so I don't know the first thing about what else is going on there. I feel like as I was reading Wind and Truth, there were moments in there that probably were touched upon in some of his standalone novels, especially with off-world things, off-world characters. It just seemed like he had little mentions of things that I was like, I have no idea what that was. And that was kind of what I was confronted with before I decided to read this 5th book. I just don't keep up with all that. And if I didn't receive some great materials on YouTube, I'm indebted to Daniel Green because of his wrap-up that he did on his channel. It was like a 2.5-hour wrap-up of Rhythm and War. It was very helpful to use that to catch me up to book 5 because I'd read all the 4 books, but it had been several years since the last time I'd read anything by Sanderson. And then I found a channel called Wizards and Warriors, and they did a full recap of the Stormlight Archive that was most helpful. I think that was probably the biggest thing I could have used to get right back into the story again, because I'd lost all my frames of reference, where the characters were at, of the struggles they had been through, and it was just a lot to try to wrap my head around this new book that's going to be throwing even more stuff. So having those 2 reviews handy for me helped me to really prepare myself for reading the 5th book, which on the whole was, I think, better than books 3 and books 4. I know a lot of people really like book 3, Oathbringer, but a lot of folks really weren't satisfied with Rhythm of War, book 4. Wind and Truth to me was a little bit better than that. The pacing was a little more get down to business. Let's get through this book. There's a lot of pages. However, the way that Sanderson kind of gets at all this stuff, it seems like he's just weaving a path instead of point 0 to point 1. It's just, it's tough. to read a meandering author for that many pages. If it were a shorter book or something, then I might be able to push through that endeavor, but that's one of my biggest struggles with some of these Stormlight books with Sanderson. He even kind of meandered a little bit in the Robert Jordan novels when he finished the last 3 books of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series. There were just inklings of stuff that I was like, what is this all about? Why do you have to mention plants that were never mentioned in the first 11 books, or add unnecessary details to Robert Jordan's world that just was not a part of it at all? I get that he maybe wanted to kind of fancy it up and bring the world out a little bit more, but Robert Jordan had already established all of that clearly from first book up until the point that he passed away. And Brandon, maybe I should just call him Brandon. Brandon is the kind of author that did great. I mean, he did kind of stick to the storylines. He did his best to match his descriptions of characters, but Brandon is the type of author that appears to tell more than show. In my mind, better authors do more of the showing of emotion than telling, and I can get into more of those details later.
Let's start from the beginning.
Basically, we're brought into this world. It's called Roshar. Brandon is pretty much a master at world building. This entire ecosystem has been well thought out. They have plants that respond to the different weather patterns, and there's different geographies and different lands, different oceans, different everything. So the world is pretty well described, and I think that's one aspect of Brandon's Stormlight Archive that is enjoyable. He seems like he's very familiar with this world that he's built up in his head. It's impressive, I will say that, how he builds the magic system in to make it operate in a sort of mutual relationship with the planet and the creatures that live on it. There's like magic that's imbued and like recharged in these spheres that they use. It's creative stuff, but by the time you get to book 5, you've learned about how humanity has manipulated this stuff to a point that the mystery has gone away from the actual magic, and it's explained in a scientific way. I think Brandon tries to explain everything to a T. Robert Jordan had a great magic system by using the weaving from the Aes Sedai, and there are other magic systems that really get into how the magic works, but it's not necessary. It's kind of a fascinating addition to the story and adds a little technical aspect to how the world works. But as the reader, personally, I don't need that, but it was a cool gimmick. So there is a separation between societies, like a caste system, throughout the books. However, that caste system is somewhat being broken down through interactions between what they call light eyes and dark eyes. And the light eyes are the royalty, the warriors, the higher in society folks. Somehow their genetics distinguish their social importance. And if you have dark eyes, then you're typically a worker or somebody who is kind of lower in a serving role. And then there are these creatures that also are very humanoid that live on Roshar. They have like carapace armor and they are alien in nature, but somewhat human in shape. They speak different languages. The Parshendai were naturally a part of the world of Roshar and very in tune with the world. And each of Brandon Sanderson's worlds appear to be created and managed by certain magics and certain gods. It's an interesting blending of two different societies, and humans are naturally a little more aggressive than the existing Parshendai that live on this world.
Oh no! We suck again!
Getting into the characters of this book is tough. There are a lot of characters, a lot of point of view characters that Brandon, I think, tries his best to make distinguishing features about. The biggest thing that separates a lot of his characters are just the roles they play in this book. Kaladin, Shallan, Dalinar, they all seem to have this kind of base quality about them that they are what they are, so they need to act like what their traits are. Kaladin has to stand up for people and protect people. He's a protector, but he's also going through his own things. And over the 4 previous books until you get to this one, he's just like this utterly depressing and uninspiring person.
I feel sorry for you.
The personal struggles of all these characters become kind of the intended arcs, I think, that Brandon wants to put into his story. But in my mind, it's normal for people to go through self-discovery and finding a shred of self-esteem for the role they play in life. Some of the psychological concepts in here are pretty neat. Like Shallan basically has a dissociative identity disorder, has multiple personalities that all take on a role in her life, and she's learned to interact with them rather than let them control her. So in some ways, she's got a psychological win through this, but it's still like these lingering depressive thoughts just keep being mentioned. When you have real depression, that's true. When you have really gripping anxiety, that is true. However, they're out in the world, they have to interact with people, and so in the end, it doesn't completely obliterate their agency within their world, but they sure sometimes hem and haw about it a lot. It just doesn't feel natural, and it kind of brings me out of the story when I have to rehash all their emotional trauma. I've already read about it in the first 3-4 books, so I'm just like, well, why are we still talking about this? But I mean, in some respects, for some people, it never really truly goes away, and maybe I just am yearning for the main characters to be more main character, like have some strength.
Stop it. Get some help.
It's unrealistic of me to expect him to be strong 100% of the time, but there are just these moments in the book where he spends equal amount of time of them being not representative of who they really are. And I would rather see like the characters showing their good traits, their positive attributes. And it's just this seesawing about, well, are they sad now or are they happy now? I just kind of get so confused. It's inconsistent character work that I have a hard time.
I don't suppose you want to talk about this, do you?
So the main character's Dalinar. He's always been a thorn in my saddle because what was in book 3, Oathbringer, you have to go through his backstory. He is this extremely violent man, and he kind of comes to the self-discovery, and he becomes less aggressive and more pensive, but at the same time, Dalinar isn't like the smartest man in the world. His dialogue and a lot of his interactions with his wife and other people, he just seems very unsure of himself as a general, as an emperor, as a king. The path that he's come along, I get why people refute his leadership. They refute his self-proclaimed position in this world as the king of the surviving human armies. And I don't know, he feels inconsistent to me, and a lot of people say that
Dalinar is their favorite character.
But I just don't feel like he's as genuine as I think Branderson had tried to make him appear. He just doesn't seem as strong as I feel like he should be. It's just something lacking about him. His wife, Navani, analytical, not enough heart. She's so black and white, no gray in there at all. Her scientific intellect, emotionless in a way, and I don't buy that either because she shares a love with Dalinar and she has feelings about her family and where she came from to who she is today. Jasna, I call her Jasna, but Yasna I think is in this book barely. She's kind of, the strength of her character is completely tanked in this one. I mean, honestly, she's not really in it at all, but she loses this little logic battle, and I feel like Brandon probably could have spent some more time on getting into that argument. It was kind of a quick chapter, and almost like Yasna ended up getting defeated almost too easily. Like such a smart character like that should be able to come out on top, but I guess if she's fighting against Odium, and here's where some of the confusion gets, is how do these gods end up taking on people so that they become their surrogates in a world that they can live in? I don't know. So we get to a point where some of these characters are a little less important. There's heralds, which to me seem like the most useless characters because I've been reading about them and they're all just weak and giving up. And then in this book, it opens the door and tells you why. And you think about it, 10,000 years of doing what it is you do to try to keep the world in check. The role of the herald starts to make more sense to me in this book than it has leading up to it. I've been lost as to why heralds even exist when they seem to be ineffectual for the most part. There's just like the legends of them, and a lot of them seem to have like 2 different names, and it's hard to keep track of all that. All the T names, Taravangian, Town, Talamut, I don't know. They just, so much. Again, there's too many characters. There's too many like side plots, wasted dialogue, gimmicky interactions, and things like that. And one of my most disappointing characters is Sigil, who ends up being in command of an army, and he just seems like the weakest leader I've ever read about. And all the books up to this point, I thought Sigil was a strong character, maybe a little bit unsure of himself, but at the same time, he could execute things properly and with confidence. In this book, he's given a position of leadership, and every chapter I read about Sigil is him doubting himself or doubting his ability to lead. He doubts in front of his second in command, and they're like,
Oh my God, you can't let anybody hear about this.
it's like, I don't even want to hear about it.
We don't need to hear about that. Thank you.
I just really did not enjoy reading that. By the end of the Sigil chapters, you start to see Sigil actually show his acumen as a leader, be fully like convinced.
Actually can do this.
And then the next time you read about him, he's like,
Oh, I can't. I don't know. Everybody's gonna worry about me.
again, these inconsistencies of character are the things that I think I have the most struggle with.
How do you know what's good for me? That's my opinion!
My favorite character is usually Kaladin. And then Szeth. Szeth was the assassin in white from the first book, and he was the perfect killer, but then he ends up breaking his bond with his former employer, we'll say, and now works for Dalinar. And Szeth and Kaladin go off on this adventure, and we also learn Szeth has his backstory in this book, so we get to find out his roots, where he came from, how he became such a mixed bag of emotions and duty to self and duty to others. And there's a lot that Szeth has to work out for himself in this book, and he has a pretty satisfying character arc. Kaladin's character arc is pretty cool by the end of this book. Adolin is the prince, son of Dalinar, and he has spent a lot of time being this angry, almost juvenile character, has weird fascinations for clothing and swords, but I don't find that as an interesting aspect of what makes Adolin Adolin. The fact that he likes fancy clothes and shopping for fancy clothing and appreciates a good outfit and what it looks like, I get that. But I don't find that fascinating as a character trait. The guy is a warrior. He's touted as the best swordsman in all of this land, and yet he's got these very like idiosyncratic character traits that just seem to rub me the wrong way. Now, in the end of this book, Adolin actually has a pretty good arc. He appears to grow up finally, because it was just a mess. It was so frustrating to read Adolin at all in Rhythm of War. I don't know. It's just a lot. The story, I believe it was better than book 4, as I've kind of mentioned. It's just paced very, very slowly. Reading the chapters wasn't that bad because Brandon is pretty good about supplying dialogue, a lot of dialogue, almost too much dialogue, because the dialogue doesn't really change anything. It's empty. It's two people talking and one person being serious and the other person's not being serious. And then it's like,
What are you doing right now?
Right now, I'm just breathing.
Oh no, I mean, what are you trying to do?
Well, I've been doing everything up until I got here.
it's just like these double entendres and just useless little quips. These things that I just don't understand in the writing. I don't know why he's doing it. I think he thinks he's being clever, Branderson, and I just don't find it clever at all. I think it's a cheap trick. I think it's just an underthought out joke. Like, just cut it out. Just get it out of there. It doesn't need to be there.
Stop it. Get some help.
What's the purpose of them being together? Why are these two characters interacting? Or why is this character coming to talk to this group of people? So they can sit there and horse around and make jokes? No, there's got to be a purpose for this interaction. Otherwise, it's a waste of time. And so I think that's what a lot of the first part of the book was like, oh, we're going to reestablish character relationships, even though we already understand. And as you continue to read, you start seeing that Brandon's just kind of throwing in these weird bits of information that nobody really needs to know. He talks about plumbing in this, like how they made the plumbing to make things better for the army. I mean, you're just filling up the world with... And then the other thing, like all these reports, gotta write reports. Okay, great. Thanks for telling us, Brandon. Appreciate it. Reports. Gotta put your reports in. I can't do anything today because of reports. Even though we're having a massive war outside, we got reports. Let's go... all this stuff. I'm just like, nah. How do we get the food distributed? Is this how the army is ran? Because we need this person in charge of that and this person in charge of that. Meanwhile, people are out there dying on the battlefield while you guys sit there and talk about towers. Awesome. Great. I don't get it. There's no sense of urgency. From the beginning of this book, they said, we have 10 days to get everything figured out. Find out who the champion is the last battle with Odium, or blah, 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 blah. There's so many scenes where there's just so much horsing around. Like, there's no pressure.
Honestly, don't worry about it.
It was supposed to be 10 days, as I said before. But another frustrating thing is I just didn't see the difference between day and night. We're back here at the same place at the same time. I mean, the only way I know that there are days happening is that there's just continuous battles. There's no real attention paid by Branderson to distinguish between night and day. It happened maybe 3 times where I was like, okay, that's a night, and then here we go in the morning, early morning, they're up at it again or whatever. Day to day didn't feel like day to day. It just felt like one thing. And granted, there's a portion of the story where they're in this like psychic realm, and so time dilates and does things differently. I just couldn't tell the difference between each day because there was no attention paid to it from day to day. The last chapter didn't indicate the close of a day. It was just a lot of just like, just go. The only way I knew there were actual days between each other was the fact that he had a page that said day 5 or day 6 or whatever. What I did find good, and I know I've complained a lot, is that I did get some answers about how the humans came to Roshar, a bit about why, a bit about the gods fighting each other over this land and also condemning each other to this land. There's a lot of other parts and other pieces going on that seem to make a little bit more sense this time around. It did seem to fill in a lot of questions that I had from earlier books. So there was a conclusive element to this book. And then he does set it up to open up this world. It feels like Roshar may not be the only world that we end up on in the Cosmere. If the world of the Cosmere expands, it's going to become very, very difficult to follow. And that's one of my biggest gripes too, is that there's just so many types of characters. What do they do? What can't they do? Depends on Branderson, I think, because he seems to arbitrarily grant strengths as he sees fit. It just seems like there's so many random things about each of these characters. I'm looking for consistency and it feels inconsistent. It's elusive.
Yeah, I'm lost.
At this point, I want to get into some heavy spoilers because I have some specifics about what I found. I just didn't want to have this review come out without having some specifics as to my gripes because, you know, evidence is a nice thing to have. I just want to get through each day, my impressions of each day. I know a lot of people probably don't want to go into that kind of detail. I might just go through some of the aspects of the book that either I really liked or found to be just absolutely absurd. The beginning of the book, kind of sluggish. Day 1 really didn't have much to offer. I kind of wish that I could have just flipped right past it. There were all these partings and people taking their leave of each other and a lot of dumb humor, a lot of stupid interactions. I'm sorry, I'm just being blunt.
Why would you say those things?
Kaladin and Seth end up leaving together. That was about the most interesting part because somehow they needed each other. And 2 opposing characters who've fought battles against each other and have been enemies of each other now becoming friends. They kind of help each other learn about each other during their story arc. But everything else I could do without in that day 1. They kind of stressed an urgency, like Shallan and Adolin and Dalinar and everybody is like,
we gotta get moving. We only have 10 days left.
Oh, it's gonna be 9 days soon.
We gotta go.
So Shallan and Adolin end up back at Urithiru, and rather than going to the leaders and telling them about the things that they just learned about, telling them key information, they go decide to have a shower and make love and all that stuff. Isn't that nice? It's like nothing's wrong as long as we have time to be all lovey together. It's so sweet. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is burning or about to be, and this is how they treat it. Yeah, cool.
Nothing can stop love.
They notice like a secret army is coming through Shadesmar, and they're like,
oh my god, we have to get there. We have to tell them they're coming, they're gonna attack.
Okay, but first a shower and a conversation and a walkabout, and we're gonna do all this, and then now the meeting. It's like, come on.
It's cool.
Give me, you want action? We're gonna do action.
Cool essay.
Day 2, Dalinar is always asking questions, always speculating, maybe this, maybe that. Dalinar to me is the most...
Like, I just get some answers. I have so many questions.
It's like, duh, that's all the questions we have too. We're sitting there trying to figure it out. Should I pay attention to your suppositions, or should I just kind of read over it? Like, this is how Dalinar thinks. And I get caught up in this whole, like, maybe. He says,
Maybe this is it. I don't know, maybe.
but he's like indecisive. And as a leader, I've never really known leaders, strong leaders, to be indecisive and unsure of themselves.
Yeah, I'm a decider.
It just doesn't make for someone that I have any confidence in, whether I'm reading it or if I were to hypothetically be following Dalinar. I'd be like,
God, this guy doesn't know his head from his ass.
but there's no stakes. There's nothing that increases the risk of making strategic decisions. I really found nothing from their plans. They talk about it, but none of it's effectual. Just asking questions about what the enemy might do only makes it worse, and it gets us nowhere. Just get to the parts where the characters are worried about something happening. Like, all this is just blah.
Get to the point!
There's a moment when Navani's like talking to herself about wanting to go and just explore and be like a whimsical person who's no responsibilities, and
Oh, I guess I have to be a queen today and do what I'm supposed to do.
it's like,
Bitch, please.
you've been a queen for years and years and years and years and years and years and years. To hear you lamenting, that sounds like something you might do in your first 6 months of your queendom. She says, and I quote, "It was time to be a queen," which regrettably meant dealing with all the random issues that no one else could. Bummer. I'm sorry. Regrettably, I'm sorry for you. You're the queen. Like I said, you've been doing this for years. That is just weak character moment for me. And it takes me right out. I'm like, who is this person?
You done lost your damn mind.
Zeth's portion of his backstory in this has really been non-existent. It's not nearly as in-depth as, say, Dalinar's history, Shallan's history, or Kaladin's history, or even Venli's history, which one of the Parshendai. But yeah, like day 1 and day 2, it's just a whole mess of redundant conversations. Where the hell is this going? Wasted time. And it doesn't feel like the characters are becoming anything else because they all use the same jokes. They all joke in the same way. I don't know. They're just the worst jokes.
Hello? That's not funny!
And then one thing that I noticed is, like, Sanderson really seems to think that psychology has come through years and years and years of learning, of testing, of trying to get answers in an ethical way. It's a lot of trial and error. The author has a good grasp of what mental health ought to look like, but the assumption he makes that everyone just understands this concept seems a little empty to me, distracting to me. Some people can't get out of their sadness no matter how hard they think about it, no matter how hard they try to rationalize it. Emotionality isn't rational. A lot of it's self-discovery, which is basically what you see in all of these characters, is that they have a self-discovery period. It takes a long time to get there for some of them, I believe, but yet it's knowledge, and we're just supposed to take it for granted that, you know, being happy is a choice and being sad is a choice. And a lot of the emotions and thoughts we have, we may not feel like we have choice or control over them, but we most certainly do if we practice it and learn how to do what we didn't do before. I don't know, a lot of stuff taken for granted in these books that I kind of find offensive in a weird way, if I were to be honest. I shouldn't be offended by it, but it's just a lot. Day 3, Adolin has gone over to where he's supposed to be guarding the Azish peoples. He is preparing, getting ready. There's a lot of dialogue. The Adolin chapters, it seems like Brandon Sanderson is not presenting urgency in his book. It seems like the characters have all the time in the world to relax, rest, play strategy games, make jokes, go check on the state of affairs. It's just that there's no sense of urgency. Sometimes the action is completely removed from the book, and that's no fun either. It just feels like Sanderson is really trying to establish a little more character for Adolin in terms of how much he cares about others and his battle knowledge and prowess, and how to navigate not having his Deadeye Maya, the sword, around with him, because at some point she ends up leaving. It adds tension, and that was a good thing. I think Adolin's battle was the biggest focus of the whole thing.
Well, that's true in a way.
It's just that not much of the world is deeply ingrained in my brain. I have such a hard time understanding the story as a whole. The Heralds, the Fused, Shadesmar, the Spirit World, Spren, the Knights Radiant. Are people really dead when they say they're dead, or do they go to somewhere else? How are the Fused and the Heralds different? I just don't understand. Like, in a story this big, I feel like Sanderson's job should be hammering this information into us. At times, he arbitrarily just throwing up rules or explaining something that we have to take for granted, I guess.
Whatever you say, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
And as a consequence of that, it just loses me. It loses my attention, it loses my interest, and I just have to continue to read. Get back into that story and get back into what's going on here. Even though I, as a reader, believe the information I'm reading is useless until I get to a point where it is useful. And one of the endings of Day 3 that was kind of upsetting to me is how Adolin and Yanagon, the emperor of the Azish temple over there, they're just bonding in the bivouac. It was such a lame conversation between the two of them. And now dinner plans with generals.
Yes, the first day of the battle has been hard and everything, but let's all get together for dinner. Take all the generals off the battlefield and let's go rub some elbows and get some food.
Gets a laugh like a quarter of the time.
Meanwhile, all the soldiers and all the army military, the supply chains, all the essential people in the army can just stay out on the battlefield because, you know, the enemy's trying to get in. Somebody's got to be out there, but let's just pull all the generals in for a dinner. Sounds great. That's kind of how I read that stuff, and I think to myself, I don't understand this. There's just no sense of urgency. This place is going to hell, and you're just like, well, let me go water the flowers. Although I will say at the end of Day 3, the battle did get kind of cool. Adolin showed up with the shard plate and did some cool things and showed us what we were going to expect out of the battle. At that point, that's just kind of like eye candy. It doesn't feel a part of the rest of it. It's just a cool part that Sanderson was able to add in there, some action. Day 4, it starts out with Adolin having conflicting emotions about killing and being a warrior and being a sword fighter and going to war. He doesn't like it, but he's got to do it. That's like everybody's job.
I don't like it.
I have to do it.
I don't like my job, and I don't think I'm gonna go anymore.
You're a soldier. You've either A, wanted to be a soldier all your life and probably fantasized about being a hero, or B, haven't accepted the fact that this is your job, this is what you chose. I just don't understand the disconnect there. But, I mean, Adolin's one of the greatest warriors and he hates it. Sigsil, constant doubt about being a commander. Taking Sigsil's doubt and just filling up pages and pages of it and worries. Is he ever going to get over it? Day to day, whenever you read Sigsil, he's going through some sort of personal doubt. Brandon Sanderson wrote like a couple pages where Sigsil was reviewing his battle plans and all these seasoned generals are like,
oh God, he's so great.
Oh my God, that's
a good plan.
Oh, good.
Just to make Sigsil feel better, he knows what he needs to do, and he would get the buy-in because he is the commander. To portray it like it's all a lie, like he's having serious imposter syndrome.
That man's an imposter.
That's fine. Mention that in the beginning, and then just kind of show it instead of saying,
he's still having doubts. He's still having worries.
I don't understand. Day 5, we see the Sprinter jokesters. Everybody's got a joke. And Sigsil continues to doubt as a commander. And another thing about Sanderson is that he doesn't give them character traits. He tells you, if they're a windrunner, great, then they can fly. And they have certain ideals, and they're protectors. What about a windrunner who is selfish? That would be an interesting character. How about a bondsmith that's an isolationist? How about a light weaver who doesn't enjoy lying? That's kind of Shallan, but I don't know. It's they seem to embody these characteristics just because of who they are and what is. So I don't understand that. Like, oh, he's a king, so he has to act like a king. I don't know. Brandon's version of a king. What does a king do? Why does a king have to be such a stereotype? Why do windrunners have to be so stereotypical? They fly and they lash and they do these things. But who are they? What do they care about?
I care about my family.
Like, he tells that straight to you. He doesn't show us. In one of the interludes, there's a mention of a fabrial shaped like a handgun. There's no handguns in the Cosmere as far as I know. Why would anybody know what a handgun shape looks like? You could have said the Fabrial had a barrel attached to a grip, a handle, a chamber with more Fabrials or something like that. Could describe it. It seems like a cop-out. And Sigil, as a commander, seems to get weaker. It's like all of his soldiers, they already know he doubts himself and have to come up to him and provide reassurance and confidence to him, like,
You did a great job as commander. It's been 2 days and you've done great.
Appreciate it.
it's like, yeah, the commander should know that. They shouldn't need language like that. It's like he's forcing these iffy thoughts into Sigil's psychology, and he's like thinking about his own capability, and he's not being consistent to himself at all, which makes Sigil just so hard to read. He's just so inconsistent to his own self in this whole book, and it's distracting. He could be a real badass in this whole war, and Brandon opted to make him into this unsure little git that just couldn't find his way out of a hat. Like, he could show Sigil making good choices on the battlefield. Or even if he's not confident, show him being hesitant in the moment and not making a good choice and losing soldiers over a bad choice so that he learns from that. But none of that happens. He just says,
I'm unsure.
I don't know what to do.
telling us and not showing us what he does. Show how Sigil is thinking and adapting and improving to his new role. And if the army under Sigil knew how shaky their leadership was, everything would fall apart. And it doesn't, so that fact right there tells me, why the hell are we even entertaining this character arc of being Mr. Unsure Sigil? Just doesn't make sense.
Kind of mad.
A lot of characters that Brandon writes don't make sense to me. There's a character, a warform named Leshwi, glanced at Venli in anger, is the sentence. Leshwi glanced at Venli in anger. What does her anger look like? Like, Brandon does this all the time. Looks at her in fear. Looks at her in shame. Okay, I can think of shame. I have to accept that the look looks like shame. It's better writing if you actually show what that shame looks like. If that's sadness, what does that look like? What does Venli's anger look like? Here's how Brandon would do it. Sophie glanced down in sadness. Rather than do something like Sophie glanced down in sadness, you could say that in such a different way that would just hit the reader more impactful. Like, Sophie pushed back her tears. Not a drop came. She put her head down. As opposed to Sophie glanced down in sadness. Like, it tells me nothing. And that's all over the pages. And maybe I'm being critical, but 1,300 pages of that, it loses me. I don't know. It's just lazy writing. Show what sadness looks like. Don't tell me they're sad.
My head hurts.
What does the fear on their face look like? When you say there's
Fear on the faces of the men.
like, men were jittery, some were throwing spears to the ground, a few were shuffling their feet, wide-eyed, trembling tears, unable to speak.
6.5 hours later.
There's an entire chapter we didn't need. There's several of those. Like, there's some dream sequences influenced by odium, and okay, we don't really know why they're there. It's just like Brandon just kind of tore off into this little area like, oh, something weird is happening. You guys will figure this out. And then like a couple chapters later, they kind of drop a little line explaining about why that happened. And then no further. To me, that's a wasted chapter. They could just say, yeah, I've been having visions lately that are disturbing. Something is weird about them. Is it because we're in the spirit realm? And I'm like, I don't understand. I don't understand why he goes to this effort. I could just cut that out and put in a really cool section here. Something comes up. And then the other three people can be like,
Yeah, I had something similar to that.
just spend a paragraph or two rather than 10 pages. And then later on after that mention, you can go into some detail, but by then we already have an idea that something is wrong. But to bring it up ahead of time, I don't know. I just feel like some of Brandon's plotting, where he positioned and put chapters in action, was also kind of a failure. Day 8. Sigil. Still having trouble with his character. He's trying so hard to make us feel like Sigil is a weak, incompetent character, but we all know that's not really where Brandon wants to go with this guy.
He's proving himself. He's proving himself.
But he does just fine. You don't need to go through all this self-doubt. It becomes predictable. And that's no fun to read when you already know how something's going to come out.
Zero fun, sir.
Brandon talks too much about how battle mechanics work. Yes, there's soldiers moving in line and shifting and people being taken off the field by healers and exchanges and this and that and the other. You're just kind of filling in details that we just don't need. Talk about what's happening in the battle. Who are they fighting? What's going on around them in the battle? Do they have to be mindful of other things? I feel like there's just so much missed.
Go. Let us gingerly touch our tips.
Adolin is playing this game Towers with the King Yanagon, talking like it's a Sunday afternoon, playing a little game. I don't know how Sanderson thinks that's okay to turn the battle on and off. Like, this would have been way more tense if the battle were just going crazy. How are they going to address the holes they need to plug? Reinforcements. It's almost like people clock in and clock out of battle. It just doesn't make any sense. We don't have a grasp of how desperate things are. It's just a battle and another battle, but it's just not there. Interludes, sometimes they're fine. I know Odium was in a lot of them, but sometimes they have other characters like Risen. I don't think they're a part of the Stormlight Archive that much. I think they're more a part of the Cosmere as a whole. It just adds more to my confusion. I'm just always confused at the introduction of new stuff in these books because I don't have a handle on what already exists. I think that's one of the hardest parts reading these books. Day 9, they start going back to the Stormfather's past, and those god chapters, I'll call them, are interesting. They add another layer to the history of the gods on Roshar between Odium and honor, as well as cultivation, the three gods that are at war for Roshar. It did reveal a lot about how things came to be, but in the end it really didn't affect the story outcome. Dalinar was trying to find answers about where honor went, trying to understand all of this so that he has agency in choosing his champion, so to speak, who will fight in this last battle against Odium. And he's also trying to figure out who Odium's champion will be.
That's what I'm talking about.
Szeth is trying to fight these warriors, which is cool, but I think at the same time Szeth's battles are hurried, and we get versions of what it looks like to fight a Lightweaver or a Bondsmith. We get an idea of these battles, but there's also this psychological healing going on at the same time. Interesting way to present an arc for Szeth and Kaladin. They're both kind of learning about themselves during these chapters, and I didn't really find much distracting about them because they were pretty much linear for the most part. Adolin had to find himself in these books and become his own man, his own leader, without any taint from his family or his father, who has this estranged relationship. And then having Kaladin learn how to play a flute. That was kind of a thing that I believe it was Wit wanted him to do. That was part of what he was going on this mission to do. Not just to help Szeth, but to help himself in some way to understand the world. And that was kind of neat too. Him practicing flute and trying to figure out how to use it to gain access to the wind. It didn't really embellish on that though. It didn't really do much. It just said he had to practice the flute. I think it was really horrible that Brandon told us what the effect of the flute was going to have before Nail gets a chance to show us why it's so important. It just seems like the wrong order of operations. That flute is tied to Nail's past somehow, and Brandon just gave that away when it could have been cool to see Nail actually go through the experience of being reminded of his past. I don't know. We could have just started with Kaladin played the flute, and then Nail could have been like,
"It just brought me back to a past that I forgot. I had no idea that song would do that to me. What power was that?"
You know, like there could have been something a little more cool wrapped up around that one event that seemed so important. That was the one reason that the flute needed to be learned, so that it could play the song to remind Nail to release him from his bitter anger as a herald and come back to good. Just seemed like a sloppy choice. And there are characters that pass in this book as well. I kind of don't really care about them.
I don't care. I don't.
Sigsel's first in command, Leighton was one.
Don't care. Don't care.
There's a few others, not really consequential.
Don't care. Still don't care.
Like, it's hard to get attached to characters who don't have traits. There's nothing visceral about knowing that a Windrunner fell, or just because Brandon Sanderson says that they're a friend or a confidant, their death just doesn't matter to me as the reader.
I don't care.
And if I'm not invested in that friendship, what the hell does it all mean?
What the hell is that shit?
And so the end of this book, I mean, it was satisfactory. I guess you kind of get the character wrap-ups that you want. Kaladin's fate, Adolin's fate, those seem kind of cool. Szeth's kind of different different approach to life. Seems like he was healed through the power of therapy.
The power of Christ compels you.
There aren't therapists in this world, but apparently soldiers and lots of other people know the value of therapy. He talks about it, but it's almost taken for granted, so.
Goose fraba.
The end of the story, there's surprises. I don't want to say too much. I mean, I've been really spoilery. I don't think that Dalinar are facing his son. I thought that was the whole ethical dilemma that, you know, do you kill one or 10,000? The one you care about, the 10,000 you may not. You don't know them. But we know that saving more people, it's a lot of good things that might be traded off just for the life of one person. That's that false dichotomy kind of thing, which Brandon cleverly got out of. The ending for Kaladin and Szeth was satisfying, and all the heralds. The ending for Shallan was conflicting. It was good that it ended part of her story arc. It feels like it's going to be a lot of work to get all of the new characters locked in and new characters to care about, because it's been hard enough for me to care about the old characters. That's kind of why I just don't want to go back to the Stormlight Archive, basically because I can't keep track of all this stuff. Well, I can, but I don't choose to involve my life that much in these books like I did with other books in my past, like First Law, The Wheel of Time, The Sword of Truth. Imagine if I went back and read Terry Goodkind's Sword of Truth series, I'd probably be seriously dissatisfied. But there's just, you know, you have a series that big, and this one's even bigger. It becomes a task, it becomes a chore, and if the writing doesn't appear to be getting any better, that show don't tell quality kind of writing,
I can't stand it.
the story was good because it wrapped up. It kind of gave us a good ending to this first arc. Dalinar will be missed. Seems like a lot of this is now being put on pause because of what happened at the end of the book with the Spren, the Oath Pact being changed, and all this. Again, I may sound like I know what I'm talking about, but I have no idea as to the gravity or the weight of these things.
What you talking about, Willis?
How long does the Oath Pact last, or how strong is it? Can it be broken? I mean, I sound like Dalinar now, where I'm asking questions.
Maybe not. I don't know.
But I'm just gonna say it now, so all y'all can be confused, because I am. I know that much.
I don't think so.
Another thing that Brandon said that was just so inconsistent was a drink of 200 proof awfulness. That's an alcohol measurement. Proof is like the alcohol content. 200 proof, 100% alcohol. And he's describing this experience for Kaladin as 200 proof awfulness. I don't think there's any mention of how strong alcohol is in any of these books. Again, I think Brandon mentioned the handgun, he mentioned the 200 proof awfulness, a diaper. I think he was
On drugs?
He's bringing in things that only make sense in the real world into his Roshar world. I don't get it. Handguns, I haven't seen a handgun. All I've seen is shard blades and arrows and shields, rocks, medieval primitive weaponry, not handguns, not alcohol with 200 proof.
That's a 120 proof alcohol.
No, none of that.
None of that matters right now.
Out of place, it takes me out of it. And Kaladin doesn't even drink. So how does that make sense coming out of his mouth?
You figured me out. You got me red-handed.
Brandon has a serious overuse of ellipses in this in this book. Brandon is the ellipsis god. He loves putting those little dots, dot, 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 in between every dot, 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 word that, dot, dot, dot. He's saying for dot, 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 pause, dot, 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 effect. Ellipses. Too many. I'm still trying to figure out the whole connection between Kaladin at the end, Szeth, and that Sword Nimi sequence. I just was confused as how all of that ended up happening. Nobody was warned that that would happen if Sword Nimi was able to draw from that much Stormlight, the injuries that were sustained. Maybe nobody knew that would happen, but okay. All right. I guess that's what's happening.
What are you doing?
And then there's just little things again. Ishar said, I haven't seen so clearly for the first time in centuries. But we know that he's been locked in his heraldic role for millennia. Why wouldn't Brandon say millennia? Maybe it's only been centuries? I don't know. There's no way to check that in my mind unless you find it somewhere obscurely in one of the previous books. And so odium now is retribution, honor and odium. And I think Dalinar, despite him dying, has been remade somehow. This is all news to me. Don't know how that works. I guess Brandon can do whatever he wants. I don't know if it makes sense or not. And then the ending with Sigil actually becoming a character I kind of liked in the last chapter that I read of him, or two. Odd, but okay, I'll take it. If Sigil's going to be interesting going forward, great, because I've been waiting for him to be interesting the whole time.
Yes, queen.
Yas, queen.
I mean, I have a lot on this video, a lot of my complaints and gripes. I really didn't want it to sound like I was being overly critical, but in a lot of ways, Brandon Sanderson's books just make me think about all this stuff all the time when I'm reading it. It's not horrible reading, but it's very tedious to get through that, and 1,300 pages isn't easy, and it's hard to stay motivated on a book that big when a lot of what I'm reading, it feels very surface. Even though there's a lot of story, a lot of information, I just don't feel personally invested in the story any longer. And I think that's probably why I'm not going to continue to read the Stormlight or even pick up Brandon Sanderson as an author. I mean, if I run out of things to read, but there's so much other stuff that I prefer, different authors that I prefer, that I'd rather spend my time reading those than using up a month of my time to read one book by Brandon Sanderson that really is average quality to me. More power to the Brandon Sanderson fans, the loyalists. Y'all love him for a reason. You love his story. Something sings to you like a Parshendai about the stories. Great. You like that endeavor. I'm happy for you. That's probably something I tapped into with the Wheel of Time with Robert Jordan, but that was my epic fantasy, and I don't know if I'm up for another one, but in my opinion, it has to be better than what I'm getting from Brandon Sanderson. I think on the whole, I'm going to rate this book, and just so you know, it's a beautiful book. I mean, Brandon Sanderson offers us a quality product when he sells these. I mean, that's gorgeous. Cover art's by Michael Whalen, who is legendary. He's done cover art for R.A. Salvatore books. He's done cover art for a lot of different authors in the 90s. Robert Jordan, all of the Wheel of Time books were Michael Whalen. It's a very pretty cover, I will say that. It has a lot of this interior art. The end pages here has color photos. There's illustrations within the book, various garb or animals or processes or events. The back of the dust jacket has this gorgeous map of Roshar, which is the world. You're getting a lot out of your purchase, but again, I that's just so freaking much. A book that I'm reading right now is that much. And those are thick pages too. There's only 500 in there. I'm more into reading this stuff than God. Unless it's a standalone. Maybe there's just something brand new about it. But this book, I think I'm going to give it 3 out of 5 robes. It was better than 2 of the books in the Stormlight Archive. I will say that. 3 and 4. Oathbringer and The Rhythm of War. So I would say my favorite books were Words of Radiance first, Way of Kings second, Wind and Truth third, Oathbringer 4th, and Rhythm of War 5th. Words of Radiance was probably a 4.2 out of 5, and the others were 4 or less. I've gone through all the reasons why. The prose was frustrating, the plot, the characters were difficult to get behind, but I did get a lot of answers for everything that I needed coming up to this point, but I don't think I'll ever do it again. I think I've said more than enough in this review. I appreciate you guys if you've stuck around for this long. This video has been kind of a chonker in its own right, so thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments about this book, you've read it, anything like that, I would encourage leave a comment. Also, like and subscribe if any of this content is favorable to you. I always appreciate that, and I will end this with what we always say: remember to keep reading. Of Wind and Truth, or Wind and Truth, not Of Wind and Truth. This is not a Cahill book. They have like Carapace, Shallan has basically dissociative identity. Branderson of rulership or ruling, or what does all that mean? How? First 6 months of and it did much of a service for him. No, it wasn't Ishar. It was Nathan. Shit. And